Hello and welcome to today's webinar. We might just give it a couple more seconds just to let everybody jump in, get comfortable. If you're anything like me, when you join these webinars, you get very distracted by your phones, jumping on the computer, watching TV, all that sort of fun stuff. So we do recommend, if you want to get the most out of today's session, to 100% pay as much attention as you possibly can. We're very, very lucky today to have Peter Lawson from Real Time CFO coming in as our guest speaker. So I could introduce you, Peter, but I think you did a much better job of it, Peter. Do you mind introducing yourself and then telling us a little bit about what you do at Real Time CFO?
Yeah, sure. No problems at all. It's great to be here. Hello, audience. It's good to see that there's people interested in looking at their automation via Approval Max. A little bit about me. I practiced accounting for 22 plus years. I decided to retire from accounting and had a little bit of a break for a while, and came back to Earth as a consultant for accounting firms, and then a coach of business owners because I could see a lot of business owners do struggle. I did that, and then I decided to become a coach of coaches because the most important thing I feel, the failure. I mean, 40 well, actually 50% of small business owners in Australia fail in the first 5 years. And I know why that happens, and I know how to prevent it. The main thing is they don't seek advice. So my situation is now that I want to impose on small business owners the importance of understanding your numbers in business. And I do that through my coaches and getting that message across. Because if you're looking at your numbers, it's very hard to go to fail in business. So that's about it for me. My CFO service, yeah, it's a fractional CFO service. Small business owners can't afford to throw a full-time CFO in the mix there and give them a desk in the corner and pay them 200 grand a year. So I provide a very comprehensive reporting system. I use a software for that called SIFT, and it works extremely well. Probably the best I've seen in many, many years. Covers everything. But the beautiful thing is that we not only are keeping an eye on our clients on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, we're doing it daily. If I see anything come up on the radar on my system, I will be getting onto the client immediately because best to nip things in the bud very, very quickly. That's the other thing I like about Approval Max. We'll continue the discussion on Approval Max as we go along and some things that we want to bring to your attention today. But the thing is that all these people, they put these apps in place and they actually don't implement them properly. And the thing I like about Approval Max is it's pretty well mandatory for you to implement everything and go through an implementation process. But Scott, that's about it for me. Yeah, I'm an international speaker. I've written 4 international best-selling books on business. Look me up on LinkedIn if you like. Give me a call. That's all there. Scott, I'm going to hand over to you, mate.
Awesome. Now, we're very, very lucky to have you as well, Peter. I've probably seen you in and out of different events from when I was at Xero, from being back when I was in accounting from like 10 years ago. And that's one of the
Yep.
reasons why I'm so excited to talk to Peter today. So I'm an ex-auditor, ex-Xero, now work here at Approval Max, so it kind of makes sense. But with what Peter can do is he talks about the financial literacy and how it all ties together from a wider business perspective. So with that, we want to get a couple of examples of the types of clients that you work with, because we have many different people in the crowd from like horticulture, engineering, the local bakery, who've come along today to learn a little bit more about how they can work with their business. And what type of clients do you typically work with?
Oh, look, during my accounting career, we dealt with everything. We not didn't necessarily take on anybody that just because they had a pulse, but look, my favourite industries, I got to tell you, are retail, and I love manufacturing. I don't think there's enough done for manufacturers in this country, even though they're trying to. Uh, Manufacturers are the lifeblood of any country, any economy, and if you're strong in manufacturing, you do have a great economy. Yeah, I guess they're my 2 favorites, the retail slash wholesale manufacturing. Anybody that's carrying inventory is always very interesting because we have a very where I find most of my profit leaks is in that area of the trading statement, where you've got inventory, opening and closing, etc., and cost of goods sold. Uh, During my career, and it continues to happen, probably about 98% of businesses that I deal with have a gross profit ratio that's less than the industry norm, industry benchmark. Uh, I have a number of strategies that can help people overcome their fear of increasing margins. Of course, they have to increase prices to increase margins or reduce their cost of goods sold. So that's the sort of stuff I really get my teeth into. And also love the restaurant industry because, there's nothing like a free lunch at a restaurant when you've done them a few favors. So there
I
we go.
I
But
could agree with you there. I was a specialist in not-for-profit and a specialist in bowls clubs during my time as an auditor, and the amount of times I had a counter lunch, oh, fantastic. So I was reading one of your articles the other day, Peter, and it spoke a lot about the messy middle when it comes to finance and working with a lot of businesses, how the business owner will be like excellent at the business that they work in, amazing at what they do, but then they have that messy middle ground when it comes to working in finance. What are some of the big challenges that you're seeing businesses have on the ground, and I guess how you fix them and some of the risks?
I've got to tell you, Scott, there's a lot of businesses too scared to look at their numbers at the moment. And I'm serious about that. Um, uh, yeah, look, you got to face the music. What we've had is a lot of inflation, and it's hit us from all sorts of areas. It's hit us in our operating costs, like your power and gas, electricity and gas and whatnot. This is why I really feel for restaurants. And I see so many restaurants that have been established for more than 18, 20 years, in my local area that are going out of business. They've got to lease for lease signs on their windows. It's just very, very ordinary. So, okay, this dilemma in the middle, these business owners, they're putting their prices up and they've still got some cash flow issues. They call me in, Pete, we're putting our prices up and, we every time our cost of goods sold go up or our cost of materials go up, we're putting our prices up. But then my question to them is, and what are you checking that back to make sure your pricing's right and your margins are still intact?
Mm. That is a good question. I'm curious now. What are they checking?
Well, I'm just saying, the reason why I went all quiet there is that's exactly the response I get when I ask that question. So the situation is, when you are doing that, you're doing anything in your business, you've got to check it back to something. And Scott, you and I, both being accountants, we're all about, we've got to have 2 points of reconciliation, haven't we? And they've got to join in the one place and they've got to be the same. They've got to be talking the same. The beautiful thing about numbers is they don't tell lies, provided you've got the right accountant, of course, and the right bookkeeper and the right team around you. But numbers tell the truth. What happens? I look at the numbers for these people. I say, okay, let's have a look at your latest P&L. A lot of times it's not up to date. I get their bookkeeper to bring it up to date as of last week. That's how close we go. So I have a look at their trading statement and their profit and loss. The trading statement I go into, I check their gross profit ratio. I then go back into a number of benchmarking sources that I have, and I see what the benchmark rate is there. I can tell you here and now, I was about to say before, 98% of businesses that I've ever dealt with in my life have got their GP ratio wrong. It's always less than the industry average. And these businesses, in a lot of cases, are superior in their industry, and they should be charging top end, not even average. I won't go too much into that. But what I'm finding is that these people, they're putting prices up. They're not checking it back to see whether they've got hit right. And that's all about margins. So the GP ratios tell the story. Then, of course, the next story is, I can't put my prices up. I can't put my prices up. Everybody that goes on rings me up from the website, asks for price. And I say, yeah, I know why they do that. I know exactly why they do that, and I know how to fix it. But that's another story.
It's interesting when you talk about sort of pricing and profit margins, and you just have to take a walk down Queen Street Mall, so I'm a Queenslander, and see the amount of for lease signs. So you know that retail businesses, hospitality businesses, and many across the world are struggling. When businesses are struggling financially and that margin's been reduced, what are some of the risks that come from that, from like internal staff, from external people coming into your business that you've seen? And how do you work with them to sort of mitigate those risks?
Okay. Here's the situation, Scott. They fear increasing prices, but they don't do it. Now, it's just like if you don't ask, you don't get. So I go through a process with them to get their mindset right. I'll give you an example. I had a very large construction firm in a business in the construction industry. I'll be very vague with the type of work they do. They're turning over about 11 mil and making a loss of over 200,000. Now, these guys are saying, oh, you know, these big developers, they won't put us on if we don't come up with what they see as the price they want. And I say, good, let them go. You're better off turning over 5 million and making 20% profit. Rule of thumb is about 20% net profit. Here's the classic. They were heading towards a real calamity in relation to cash flow. You can't just keep going on like that. So I said, okay, if anything, can we just do this? Can you just do your normal pricing, which is obviously out of whack, of course. I didn't tell them that. You never call their grandkids ugly. I just do your normal pricing and just add 5% for me. You guess what? 45 days, tables turned. How many clients did they lose? None. I've got to get them to come to anywhere near their gross profit ratio. We've got to come to 18% increase in prices. And they're freaking out. But the fact is, at the moment, I'm showing them websites that don't work. You never show them their own website that doesn't work, because that's like calling their grandkids ugly. Now, I don't know anybody in the room. Has anybody in the room, if you want to put something in the chat box there or raise your hand, has anybody in the room ever heard of an ugly grandchild? No, they don't. And
You may have
there's
thought
no
about
such
it.
thing as a dumb grandchild. But the fact is, I show them their other websites, and there's all the same things shown on the websites, probably done by the same web designer. We have warm and friendly staff. Oh, we can suit all your needs. We do very efficient work for you. And I look at that and I think, yeah, well, I hope so. I didn't come here to get abused. But I show them somebody else's website. And then there's the oldie but a goodie. Oh, we've been in business since 49 BC. Well, what happens is the reason why they ask for price, because it's the only default question.
No, that's a
And,
very good point.
and
With
even some of these people have calculations to work out how much it's going to cost them to lay floors, concrete, etc.
sometimes you just need that external person to come and have a bit of a look, who has that knowledge of the industry. Being an accountant, you're in a beautiful, unique spot. You've seen the financials of so many different businesses. So you're able to give that extra insight that your direct accountant may not be able to get. So that's why the business consulting mixed with the accounting history and background is really important. Plus, you also work quite extensively in the app space as well, like utilizing technology for automation, increasing profitability. So with, I guess, to sort of circle back on some of the struggles that have been out there in the world, the increase or the strain on the purse strings, do you see any increases in like sort of fraud or people potentially not acting in the right way within a business? And secondary question to that, how do you recommend to solve those? And is there any processes that you implement within businesses to do so?
Well, that is a fabulous question, Scott, and you are so up to speed with what's happening in the economy at the moment. I've been through a few recessions in my time, and I used to audit as well, by the way, when I first started in accounting. Very hard to check on every transaction, without doing a thorough audit, of course. But the fact is, I've found a trend happening, and it happens in every recession when things get tight. Instead of people pulling in their purse strings a bit, and you get these people sitting there, they got a cigarette in one hand and a beer in the other. Oh, it's tough putting food on the table. Jesus Christ, I don't know what I'm gonna do. They're not prepared to sacrifice, and you've got to be prepared to take sacrifices in hard times. And it is difficult times. Inflation's gone up, wages haven't gone up to meet it, nor have the prices on things. But anyway, I love the fact that you mentioned fraud. It's a nasty word, I know, everybody, but we've got to face the music here and face the facts of what happens in this type of economic climate. People get a bit desperate. They're struggling to put food on the table. They can't get a pay rise. Their employers can't afford to give them a pay rise because of the very thing we discussed. They're not increasing their margins along with inflation and keeping up with the inflationary community. What happens with these people? They feel like they're owed more. They get this thing in their head that they're owed more, and they start to do silly things like taking some money. And I've seen it in all sorts of ways. I've seen a CFO so-called paying these amounts to the ATO for GST. But the funny thing is, when I investigated the account, it's not the ATO's account. And the reason why we found that, Scott, was because I had a look at their liabilities, their balance sheet, and saw on the liabilities there a massive amount owing for GST when this CFO is claiming that it's all up to date. That's where it Jared. People don't go to the balance sheet and have a look. They look at the P and yeah, everything's okay there. But this is where you'll find some cash flow issues. This is where you'll find some frauds. And the big thing with fraud, I can tell you here and now, is in payments. Goes from the purchase order. And generally, there's no independence. You know, with audit, we always require some independence along the pipeline to ensure that if somebody's doing something wrong, somebody else is going to pick it up. But the person setting the order is generally paying the bill, generally following it through. There's no independence, there's no check. And the beautiful thing about what you guys do is that you prevent that from happening because you have a very efficient system to ensure that if there is one person following that whole stream through, that it just can't happen. They can't. And the other thing that happens too, there's duplication of payments. Look, I've seen people paying cleaners that they're actually paying cleaners, but it's their cleaning business outside the office.
Yeah, I've seen many a case where an invoice gets paid twice. I was a government order back in the day, and people would submit the same invoice 3 times, cross their fingers, and unfortunately, many years ago, they would get paid because the government didn't have the resources to keep on top of it. So that's really good, and we appreciate you saying that as well, because obviously Approval Max is all built around internal controls. It's that segregation of duties, and as a part of what we do is also that data accuracy and data integrity before it finds its way into the accounting software. Do you have any, I guess, examples of when, I guess, data accuracy, and probably stems from the segregation of duties as well, has kind of fallen short, or any issues have caused, and what the repercussions were?
Oh, yeah. There's some of the ones I've done are a bit public, so I've got to be a bit cautious under privacy laws here.
That's okay.
Look, getting down to simplicities. The whole thing is a good prevention, a way to prevent. What have actually happened is that we've put budgets together, right? Now, a budget is just a guide in a lot of ways. The forecast to me shouldn't go any longer than 3 months. But if something's, materially changed from what you had intentions in your budget, it makes you look at things, Scott. It's a double indemnity on stuff. I've seen so many cases where, okay, it might be a cleaner. Generally happens with suppliers, but let's go back to the cleaning thing. We had a particular case where this particular client was allowing $10,000 a month for cleaning. Had a big factory there, etc., etc. All of a sudden, we checked back because we were bringing the figures up to date. You've got to have your numbers up to date. We were at the 12th day of the month, and we've gone $5,000 over budget. And of course, you ring the business owner. Hey, did you know? I don't know whether you're aware. Something's just come up on our system. We've checked the transactions; they're accurate. But you're $5,000 over your cleaning budget. Were you aware of that? What do you think the answer might be to that, Scott?
It doesn't sound like he's aware of it. That's for sure.
No, it's always no. So these are the little things that happen. They creep up. Now imagine that going undetected, say an extra $5,000 a month for a year. Oh, it's only 60 grand, but after 10 years, it's 600. So other cases that I've had, yes, inventing suppliers. And again, if the same person doing the purchase order as paying it, they're not going to get found out.
100%.
You've got to have that segregation. And also, you find in most organisations, there's no, as the smaller entities, not the ones that we audit so much, they've got pretty good systems in place, but the smaller entities do not have systems. They do not want to pay for systems. They do not want to pay expert opinions to come in and say, you've got to do it this way to ensure that anybody in here, oh, but these people have been here for 20 years. They're trusted employees. Yeah, they're trusted until they're finding it very hard to make ends meet at home.
It's
So,
definitely that risk, right? So you kind
Pardon?
of, so one thing that we recommend, and we kind of fit in really well, is to take away the opportunity for any fraud or any risk to occur
Yeah.
with that segregation of duties, right? So that's kind of where we really fit in. Now, I know that you also, so you work real-time CFO, ex-accountant, you also work with like sort of like digital advisory as well. Kind of do a lot for businesses, which is a really great place to be. There's a massive calling for it. How would you go about sort of like choosing the right software, using ours as a bit of an example, for a business, and then how to get the most out of that software as well? What's sort of your process that you work with?
I've got to make it a mission here, Scott. I've been a big fan of Xero since day one. And the fact is that some businesses say, I'll just start off on another, I won't mention any names, another software, another accounting software, it's cheaper. If they intend to grow their business, eventually they've got to go and find Xero. Xero has extended itself into the medium-sized businesses now as well. In the USA, small businesses deemed up to $7 million in revenue. I think in Australia, we're around about 3 or 4. But needless to say, you've got to have a consistent system, and you've got to have a system that is very, very good at downloading your transactional information in the way of bank feeds. Now, Xero, the Australian Taxation Office uses Xero's process for downloading bank feeds and information. It's impeccable. It works very well all overseas, etc. But then you've got to select a reporting software. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of reporting software. I'm not going to mention names, but they've had some wonderful features, but they've missed out on some features here. One won't do seasonality, one won't do forecasting, one won't do consolidations, etc. This is why the software that I use, and I'll mention the name, it's SYFT, SYFT, if you want to go and anybody wants to have a look at it. It's now owned by Xero. It's like the Remington ad, I like this shaver so much, I bought the company. It's a similar situation now. Xero now coordinate very strongly with SYFT. The beautiful thing about SYFT is I'm picking up things that a business owner would never look at. I'm picking up things that bookkeepers won't pick up because they don't do that sort of stuff. I'm picking up things that accountants won't see because they don't look at the darn things for a year sometimes. I find that a bit negligent, to be quite honest. But there's things I pick up, like the most important thing in this area of time is debtor days. You've got a payment system. For that payment system to work, you've got to collect your money. And this is the other thing with inventory. Sometimes everybody's carrying too much inventory. So talking about reporting software, yes, SYFT answers all the questions for me. And if they don't, they've got an extremely good support system. Now, and I know, and I'm sure everybody in the room knows that a software is only as good as its support. Simple as that. The support from SYFT is magnificent, by the way. It's just and anything that they do have issues with are generally fixed very quickly.
I'm
So,
really glad you gave that background there, Peter. So, like, I'm obviously biased. I worked at Xero for 6 years. So I really like the
mm,
product during the acquisition of Sift. I've seen Fathom, seen Spotlight, a few of the different ones there as well. And it is so important to a business to have that data and have that data working with you, and then working either internally or with an external accountant to interpret that data into business insights. So you really have a strong understanding what it is. But one thing I want to highlight, and this is why I moved from Xero to work at Approval Max, especially being an ex-auditor, is it's all around data accuracy as well. So fraud
sure.
control, yes. Invoice approvals, yes. But as you work down the flow with Approval Max, you use our capture technology to bring it in. You do the coding, there's people checking the coding, there's automatic data rules coding it for you for particular suppliers. So when that information hits Xero, you've got that 100% accuracy when it's in there. And then that makes life easier as you go through the workflow. Xero is accurate, your forecasting's accurate, the story your data tells is going to be as accurate as it possibly can be. So that's kind of where we really fit in. And it's really appreciated that you mentioned retail. We're very strong in retail, manufacturing, not for profit, a wealth of different industries.
Mm.
So it kind of fit into the story there, which is great.
Well,
You have made some commentary in some of your online presentations that I watched last week, where, and this is something that I'm really trying to work with, being the customer success person that I am, is working with my customers to get the most out of the app. So people look at us, Approval Max, it's in the name. They use it for approving invoices along the process, but
yeah.
we can do a lot more: journals, credit notes, reporting, budgeting, etc. How do you work with your clients to make sure they're getting the most out of that app, and then also not overwhelm them with features that they don't need? Like it's a fine balance, right?
Yeah. Um, I gotta make it a mission here, Scott. I don't really get into the nitty-gritty of stuff. I'm a
Yeah.
big picture guy. The first thing I do when a project hits my desk is I'm figuring out who's going to do it. I don't know whether anybody's read the Dan Sullivan books, but he's got a particularly good book called Who Not How, and it's all about first thing you do in organising a project is get the people, get the team in. So getting into the nitty-gritty, I don't do much of that, but I can say, from my previous years in accounting, etc., that it was always a bit of a tough gig, the accounts payable. Accounts receivable was much better software, much more accurate software. But the accounts payable softwares, they still allow you to duplicate in some areas.
Hmm.
Now, as I say, if you've got good support, yeah, okay, look, we're always going to make errors. There's going to be errors, but as long as somebody's there to pick up the error and stitch it up and fix it up, it's no problems. But but there's I've always found accounts receivables to be, oh, I don't know, just certainly not measured and not monitored as much as the accounts receivable side of things, the other side of the stick. And it's just as important because, I mean, if you've got three duplicated payments, what percentage, well, what have you found, Scott? You've talked about duplicated payments before. How many of those duplicated payments how many times has the person that's received that money fessed up and said, you've paid me three times?
I think so. This is going back, and I learned this when I started in audit
Mm.
working with the government. It was rife. People cottoned onto it. They found out they could get away with it, and they would just keep sending invoices just to see if they got caught. And it wasn't a perfect system, and they did notice and then fix it, implemented some approval software. This is talking like 18 years ago. I think there's a filter on right now. I look older than I am. That it was, unfortunately, people do see a bit of a quick win sometimes. So then when they have the opportunity to commit such fraud, they do it. Sometimes, not everyone, but this is a small minority. But you want to take away that opportunity for there to be any risk for them to be able to do it, and they won't do it, which is a great place to be. But yes, did they call up and say, "Hey, I've accidentally been paid twice"? Not very often, or paid. Yeah, not very often.
Well, there's another little trick that comes to mind too. The purchasing officer gets pretty palsy with the person on the other side, don't
That could happen. That
they?
could
Okay.
happen.
And, oops, we just did a duplication there. Well, hey, nobody knows about it. Why don't we do this more often?
Go 50-50 split. Hey, that's why we have brought out we've got purchase orders, we have bills, and we have purchase order to bill matching to sort of mitigate a lot of that risk. And you can set it up, person raising the purchase order, can't approve the bill. Now, to those in the crowd, please do ask some questions in the chat box below. We are going to have a bit of a Q&A in a moment, but I do want to touch on another subject there with you, Peter. So we were both auditors back in the day. We didn't put this on the landing page because us auditors aren't renowned as the people that people typically want to talk to, would you say? But
Well, they're good. They're a good cure for insomnia. Put it that way.
yeah, this is true. The corporate police I used to try and tell people, not as cool as it sounds. When you were going through an audit, let's say like looking at expenses, one of the biggest risk areas, what was the biggest, what was the hardest part about conducting that audit and caused the most frustrations? I used to find that finding the source documentation was challenging. You get E for electricity, would fall under U for utilities, or O for origin, whoever the supplier was, in the compactors, pulling them out would be quite time consuming. Have you experienced any particular challenges yourself?
Yeah. And it basically boils down to incompetent CFOs. And it really does. That makes your job pretty hard because they've got no work. Their working papers are insufficient. You've got to go through and make I mean, everything you find wrong, you've got to do a report on, and that takes time. I mean, it's okay. You sort of know it's okay, but you can't make assumptions with auditing. You get into a lot of trouble. So
Mm.
that's what I found the most frustrating thing. Just people that and they're incompetent, and you try and tell somebody politely that they are incompetent, that they either need more training or that maybe they should be an assistant CFO rather than the head CFO. But then you get these people that see, again, these people know each other and like each other and say, oh, I can't do that to my mate. So and year in, year out, you go back, same problem every time.
I've heard this beautiful comment before. We don't really need to be too accurate with our finances or check for fraud because the auditor will find it. What's your
No,
thoughts
no,
on that
not all the
statement?
time. Well, when you audit, you're just doing samples. You're looking for material variances. And if
Mm,
something's not material or deemed material, Scott, it'll get through the radar. Now, that
100%.
immaterial thing, done enough times, turns into a very material amount.
But I think you gave the example before. If they're stealing, let's say you're a large business, multi-million dollar turnover, they're only stealing 5,000 a month. The chance
Hmm.
of the auditor auditing that, very, 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 very small. But it builds up over time and it's a material amount. However, it goes different periods. It's not within their scope. So for an auditor, the best audit they can do is one with no mistakes. So then they can move on to the next one. They're not actively out there. They have a skeptical mind to search for fraud. However, it doesn't fit within their sample, then it's not their focus. So that's why we obviously recommend internal controls, invoice
Correct.
approvals. For those smaller ones in Approval Max, you can automate that. So it does go through the approvals process without human interaction. However, it's been automated to a certain limit. So if you get an invoice over a certain amount, not in line with budget, it can pop up as a flag. A lot of different aspects in our system.
What I'd like to do right now, Scott, is look, has anybody got any questions? Anybody want to raise their hand? Normally, I sort of stop every four sentences or so and give a bit of breathing space. But look, if you've got anything at all, throw it into the chat box. We've got Rochelle monitoring all that, so we jump on it pretty quickly. I'd rather, in all essence, in all honesty, and I'm sure Scott's the same, we'd rather you just interrupt when you find something that's on your mind and you can't quite understand it. If you want some clarity on something, just stop us. We're here. It's not our session. It's your session. This is for you. And the way we get our points across very nicely is when we have some interaction there, and all having a bit of a chat. I'm sure everybody in the room's got some sort of challenge. How would you like to throw something at us? Throw us a challenge and we'll resolve it for you. How's
I
that
love a
sound?
good challenge.
Free
Maybe
of charge.
we can start pointing people out. Like we got a few Karens. No, we're not that mean. We're not that mean. But feel free any question you might have. Product related, not product related, as a whole, free consulting session with Peter, with people watching. Happy to jump in there.
Either raise your hand, or if you're a bit shy, throw something in the chat box. So Rochelle, just keep an eye out for those. If you think of something along the way, okay, from Approval Max to everyone, if a firm or business could fix just one process this quarter to reduce rework, what would that be? That's a great question. That's in the chat box. If a firm or business could fix just one process this quarter to reduce rework, what would that be?
Good
Okay,
question.
it's the 11th hour of the 11th month of the 11th day. Um, all is silent. Oh, Kelly Foster, credit card expenditure. Okay, and specifically, could you just be a little more specific with that one, please, Kelly?
So I
Credit cards.
can, if that's a feature aspect of Approval
Hmm.
Max. So we are currently in development, very, very close to beta, and our release of working through expenditure, our expenditure model, we will be bringing out soon, which will have out of pocket and also statement. End of this quarter, start of next quarter. Can't give an exact date, but coming out very, very close. There you go, Peter. So Kelly has expanded on that, talking about credit card expenditure, but the best process to use when it comes to zero expenses.
The best process to use, that is zero expenses. I'm not sure on that, but Scott, you might be able to enlighten me on that. If we had my colleague at the room,
It's
she would have been able to answer that one for us today.
Yeah, well, even though I worked at Zero for 6 years, I was more on the practice management side of things. But
There
oh, with the
is
Approval
there.
Max, yeah,
I
I
know
can
for a
answer
fact
that
there
one,
is an
Kelly.
app.
Sorry, Peter.
No, I know for a fact there are a few apps in there, but there are some apps that used to be there. They're still there, but there've been no improvement on them. I won't mention any names. Look, I tell you what, Kelly, I'd be happy to investigate that for you, and
Hmm. We
yeah, I'd be happy to
oh
investigate that for you and come up with an answer. But can I just mention one thing, if I may, before I get on to Joshua's? Joshua's actually answered your question. Invited Fireflies.ai to record and take. No, no, sorry, that's just another thing there.
I
View
can help you
real-time
with that.
rating.
I'll
No,
just jump in real quick there, Kelly.
yes.
What I did mention before, I think I may have said a bit fast there, is we will be bringing out an expenses module in Approval Max, which can have the approvals process in it. The end of Q4, Q1, I can't give you an exact date. When we do bring out beta, I will pop you down on the list so you can know it firsthand. But in the interim, if you do want to use Approval Max for employee expense reimbursement, you can set your employees up with a supplier and then use the approval process that way. Does depend on how many you got going through. So zero expenses may be good for now, and you could flip to that in the future. But I'll get your customer success manager to reach out directly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott. Saved me there. I was under the bus.
All right, Peter. It's my product. I should know it.
I look, I'll tell you something, Kelly, about credit cards, and probably a good thing for everybody else. Uh, I have a bunch of coaches. I do coach coaches these days because I want them to get out there and look at numbers. But we have this little exercise where we go through 6 months of credit card transactions, and what they're looking for is any particular transaction in there that doesn't do anything to the revenue of the business. It's a good little exercise for everybody, and I reckon you can find $2,000 a month in there without looking too far. So just a little hint on an exercise that's quite good with credit cards. Everybody throws everything on there, including their own personal expenses. So one thing I will mention too, Scott, when we talk about personal expenses, and thanks for those comments, Kelly, that was excellent. One thing I will mention with small business owners, they tend to use their business account as their personal account. And that's a recipe for disaster, a recipe for failure. Um, you know, pay yourself a wage, whatever you deserve, put it into a separate account. When that money runs out, that's the end of your spending for the month or the week or whatever. So, very important to segregate. I know that's a little bit off course with it, but these are little things. We're here to help people with their businesses. We have a process here, which is Approval Max, that can help dramatically with paying bills, creditors, etc., and preventing fraudulent activity. But there's all sorts of little things that all add up. I find most businesses do fail because the owners of the business are pulling too much money out. They just run out of money.
What's been, I always love these ones. What's been the most entertaining thing you've seen someone put through as a business expense that's come through? I've seen many times, like, casks of wine, Netflix subscriptions,
I got something
a
better.
marquee rental, like those sorts of things put through
I
a
got
bowls
something
club.
better than I got something even better than I sat down with this guy in the building industry one time, went through the credit card statements. Oh no, he wasn't in the building industry. He was a car salesman. That's right. And anyway, I go through there and looking at these credit card amounts coming out on a regular basis, and I said, "Hey, you know what? I didn't know you were a developer." He said, "No, I don't do developing. I'm in the car business." Well, how come you keep buying this Penthouse magazine? Is that does that actually and claiming it as a subscription?
Oh yeah, it's like CPD
Uh,
hours, right?
yeah, and anyway, so again, that's a typical example. I tell you what, too, there's so many things on your credit. I've seen so many times on a credit card that subscriptions are being paid, and I question them and question the client and say, "What is this for?" Oh, that's for da 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 da. Oh, do you still use that? No, haven't used it for 6 months, and they're paying about $800 a month.
Hmm.
So these are the little things, everybody. I know I'm getting down to a bit of nitty-gritty, but these are the things that you need to keep an eye on. And too many times people don't do the transaction to break up and disperse all the items on their credit cards. They leave it go. Oh, that's too hard. Leave it go to then, and then. It's
Hmm.
important that you have a credit card that goes directly into Xero so that you have every transaction there. And the only way you can do that is put the credit card in the name of your business or whatever business you're using. It won't accept personal stuff anymore. That comes over.
I think I might need to do an audit of my own credit card to see what subscriptions are coming out there. It's subscription creep, I think they call it.